Welcome to this demonstration of arrays and lists inside of UiPath Studio. Recall that when we talked about variables earlier in one of our previous lessons, we talked about a variable being a container in which can hold a single value. So refer to what we talked about, the idea of a moving box in the context of a house. Moving from house A to B, or apartment A to B. And the idea that these moving boxes could only hold a single item at a time. So if we had the kitchen, for an example, we put the mixing bowl into the kitchen. If we wanted to put a plate into the kitchen, or in the kitchen box, we'd have to pull the mixing bowl out to put the plate in. The concept of an array allows us to store multiple values in a single variable, or using the analogy of the box again, the idea of being able to put a bunch of values into that same moving box. Put the mixing bowl in, put the plate in, put the fork in, all into the kitchen box, as opposed to only having room for a single value. Recall, in a variable, once we put one item in, it immediately removes the other item. It gets rid of it. We only have context of exactly what the one item was. As soon as we assign a new value into that variable, the first item is gone. It's pulled out. It's removed and replaced with the new value that we've attempted to assign to it. So as we get into this demonstration, as we have done multiple times before, simply click on our new process here under new project. So we have a blank canvas to work from. I want to call this one arrays. Go ahead and continue to save in the folder path that you prefer. In this case, let's say playing around with arrays. Once you have the name of your project, the location in which you want to save it to, and a brief description, hit create. And we will get into figuring out how do we begin building our first array. So open up your main workflow. Go ahead and bring a single assign activity into your project. And obviously we now need to begin our declaration of a new array variable, which is done almost identical to what we've done to this point with one minor change. So remember, an array is it's a special variable in context that allows multiple values to be assigned to it, as opposed to what we've seen typically to this point, a single variable holding a single value. That's really as complicated as an array gets. It's just a matter of being able to put multiple values in. We'll talk about some of the context around that here momentarily. So I want to create a new array. Notice I'm in my variables tab here. I want to type it in as str years. This array is going to hold year numbers. I'm going to do it as a type string. You could arguably do this as numeric data types, but I want to also try to do a few additional demonstrations as part of this activity. So that's why I'm leaving this one set as string. If we left it here and we would not make any other changes, str years would only be able to hold a single year at a time, given the definition of what we've declared this, or verbally have declared this array to be. It's going to hold a year or years. And the reason why is this is currently defined as we've done previously. It's a single variable, a single type, so it will hold a single value. To change this to where it can hold multiple values or be done in context of what's known as an array, if we hit the little drop down menu here under variable type, you'll notice there's an option that says array of T. The array of T is talking about type. What type of value should this array hold? So as soon as we click on this, a new box appears that we have not seen to this point before. And the array of T is, again, notice we're being prompted with the same list. What type of values should this array hold? So we still have to tell it, is it a number? Is it text? Is it a Boolean value? Yes, no, true, false type situation. In this case, I want to hold strings. It's going to be an array of strings. So every value in here is going to be of a type of text. So as soon as I hit OK here, And if I click off of there, you'll notice it says string and it has a open bracket and a closed bracket. That is the notation for an array. So now, as opposed to just string, the bracket here is telling me I can store multiple values in this variable since this is an array. So to make our assignments now and actually put values into here, I could do this in the default again, but I've already brought in an assign activity, so we're going to do it as a part of here. But again, synonymous, either one of these would have worked. So str years, you notice it's still arguing here that I haven't completed everything because I have not assigned a value yet. Arrays are done by using the open curly bracket and close curly bracket. If I would simply put those two values in and tab off, you'll notice my error has gone away. What I've told UiPath to do at this very moment in time as part of my value statement, notice it's an open curly bracket, closed curly bracket. This is what is known as an empty array. There is no data currently inside of this array here for str years. That's why the error is fine. It's got it in its proper syntax. Arrays are denoted with an open curly bracket, and then they're closed with a closing curly bracket. So to put a bit more context around here, if I put, remember this is a string array, so if I put a double quote here, type 2017 and close the quote, notice there are no errors. This array has a single value, which is basically what an original variable type is. This is an acceptable statement. I have a single value in here of the year 2017. At that rate, if this was all we were ever going to do, an array would not be, it'd be overkill for our purpose here. If 2017, if str years was only forever going to hold a single value, obviously not needed. But obviously, for our case, we're going to have multiple years here. And to get into multiple years, if I go to the end of the 2017 in quotes and put a comma, this allows me to add another value. In this case, I'm going to go 2018 and close. Now I have two values. This is where the power of an array comes into play. So instead of a normal variable only holding a single value, str years now holds a value of 2017 and a value of 2018. Now let's add another year, 2019. I'm going to go ahead and go 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. Yeah, let's go one more, 2024, end quote. So you can see everything. I want to open up my value window here. You'll now notice I've got all my values loaded here. 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. str years holds all these. So using our analogy of the kitchen box, this is our mixing bowl. That's our plate. That's our spoon, our knife, our cup, spatula, etc. You get the idea. str years is holding multiple values. So whatever you name your array, what are the items that go into that array? I'm going to bring a write line activity in underneath just to begin to start to demonstrate how do we get values back out of the array. So what I'm going to say is the value of str years, what you're going to see is I'm going to use this parenthesis notation. And the reason why is that the way you get values back out of here, str years, you notice when I do the open parenthesis here, it's saying index as integer. It's prompting me to specify a numeric value here. And this numeric value is what position in our array do you want the value returned from? And to demonstrate this, I want to start with the value 0. And obviously in my text here, I need to be consistent as to what value I'm specifying. So to follow along, I'll pull this up on the screen so you can see exactly what my text looks like. As you can see here, in quotes, the value of str years, and I've hard-coded in this 0 here. is, and then I close my quote and I concatenated. Remember, it's a type of string, right? So in this case, I'm able to explicitly return back the value that's inside of str years. Notice I'm using 0 and not 1. Indexes inside of arrays inside of UiPath start with an index value of 0. So what I should receive back here is the year 2017. It's in the 0 index position. It's the very first item in the list. It starts with what we call a 0-based index. So if I run my automation here, you will see the value of str year 0 is 2017. It's the very first item in my list. So to demonstrate this a little bit further, let's change the 0 to a 1, which hopefully implies the year 2018. So if I run my automation here, you will see the year 2018 being returned. So this is how you begin to get values back out of your array. It's done through the use of an index value, and it's all done using a open parenthesis, closing parenthesis, and recall it's even prompting us, when we first typed in str years open parenthesis, again, it's what is the index value that you want to have return from your array. So pulling item 3, again, would be, if I look at the values, item 3, remember 0-based indexing, so 0, 1, 2, and 3 would be the year 2020. If I run my automation, year 3, if I count my indexes right, should return to us a result of 2020, and exactly what we have. Another interesting concept to bring out, I'm going to bring in another write line activity here, right underneath the first write line is this notion of being able to return how many items are in our array. So if I say there are, in quotes here, say str years dot length items in our, say the str years array. Obviously have a typo, and the issue here is the length is trying to return a number. So you'll notice here, string to double. I need to typecast this. I need to take the number and turn it into a string. So at the end of length, I want to put in a .toString. What this length is doing is telling us how many values do we have in our array. And this is going to get a little bit tricky as we play with this. Go ahead and hit run here. And you'll see it'll tell us there are 8 items in the years array. So if we look at our items again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There is indeed 8 items in the array. Here's where things begin to get tricky. Remember, 0-based indexing, right? But it says we have 8 items in the array. It's counting actual items. Remember, there's 8 of them. We just counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that would imply I should be able to put an 8 here, right? And there's 8 items in my array. If I attempt to run this, you'll notice I'll get an error. It's going to tell me that the index is outside of the bounds of the array. Recall, yes, there are 8, but remember it's 0-based indexing. So the last item is 0 plus, in this case we go to 7 being the last, because the very first one being in position 0, everything is -1. So in this case, specifying the 7 instead, they get the last year of 2024. So I call this out to notice year 7 is the last item, but there's 8 in the array. It's a zero-based index that you always have to look out for. Another thing that we can demonstrate here goes back to when we were playing around with our switch activity from a few lessons ago. Let's go ahead and bring switch in. Purely again from a demonstration point of view here, but playing around with arrays in a bit more of a contextual example. Remember, our years array is of type string. So I want our switch to evaluate string characters here. In this case, str years, we'll just hard code a value in at this point. And let's say 4. Notice everything's happy. The reason why is the expression has been fulfilled. It's expecting, in this case, recall our last example was switch. It was a true false. We were evaluating a Boolean. In this case, the switch actually allows us to check text-based values. What value is inside of this expression here? So notice add new case, there's no true false here. It's expecting us to type in values here. This is one of the rare cases inside of UiPath though, that you do not need to quote your characters here. So normally you would think we would need to do something like this inside of quotes. Inside of a switch, you do not need to use quotes. It already implies that this obviously has to be text-based characters, so it does not require the use of a double quote here. So it's one of the weird moments inside a studio that you do not need to specify those values. So in this case, you notice I'm just throwing in some examples here. 2020. Feel free to follow along here. All I've done is I have not done anything more than specify the year 17, 18, 19, and 20, kind of the first few years that are in our list here. Yeah, we'll go 2021. So what I want to do now, just to demonstrate the concept here, is I want to bring on right line activities. Notice I've gone to the default activity. Remember, default is the catch-all. So if we hit a year that is not in our list here, this is going to be the case in which it is not one of the years that we've currently specified. So the year is not 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, or 2021. It's got to be one of the other years. That's all I typed into here. I want to add an activity to 17. Do another right line. Say the year is 2017. Make sure you get the right year. I'm having an issue getting the right value. There we go. The year is 2017. Go ahead and do the same for each of the subsequent years and say the year is, make sure your years are right. You're not miskeying here. 2018 to 2018, add an activity to 19. The year is 2019. The year is 2020. And my last one down here, the year is 2021. Is 2021. There we go. See, and you could add an additional case down here if so inclined, depending again on the business need to your automation as to what it is you're trying to evaluate here. If I run my automation here, the year being 4, again to demonstrate this one a bit more, going back here, year 4, remember it's zero-based index, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the 4th indexed position in our array happens to correspond to the year 2021. So going to my switch, I should see the year 2021 outputted because of this here. So if I run my automation, you'll see the year is 2021. Not to be misled, we had the year index value 7, 2024 above. the year 2021 being out of this switch. So if I go one more above that, notice we don't have a fifth element, which would be 2022. This should be where the default value gets demonstrated. So to pull it up, if it's not any of the other years in our list, I put in a 5. We haven't specified any of the values here, and hit play. You'll notice it'll say the year is not one of the previous years. And there you go, the year is not 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and the reason why is year 5 holds the value 2022, and we have not specified a value here. So the switch, to put a bit more context in here, it's actually evaluating the text that is inside of that variable. So it's pulling the number back out. So in this case, str years 5, we know from what we talked about, it's going to grab the 5th item in the list, so index 5, I should say, the 5th indexed value. It's going to see that that value is 2022 as text. And these case statements are saying, what is that value? In this case, 2022. Is it 17? No. Is it 18? No. Is it 19? No. Is it 2020? No. Is it 2021? No. We've exhausted all of the case values. Since this is 2022, the only other code that could potentially execute as a default are what we call the catch-all, and that's where we get the result of the year is not 2022. One more thing that I wanted to bring out here is, notice we are talking about years. They're in string notation. I want to be able to now do some calculations of, how many years difference are there from one index position to another. So in order to do this, I want to bring in another assign activity. In order to do this, I'm going to need another variable. I want to call this one int year difference. I want this to be a number. How many years difference are between a couple of the years here? Say int year difference on my left side, or the assignment side of my equation here. And inside of the value, I want to be able to type in str years, let's say whatever is inside 4, and say str years, and let's look at whatever is at index 1. You'll notice right now UiPath is squawking at me saying we've got a conversion problem from string or text to double being a numeric value. You cannot do, notice these are defined as strings, this is text. We can't do computations on type text. So in order to do this, we need to do a typecast. What this is really trying to say is whatever value is in position 4, subtract that value from position that is contained in position number 1. But in order to do these computationally, we need to typecast these from a string into a number. And in this case, if we do a cint and an open parenthesis here, what this is saying is convert the string in this case to a integer, convert it to a number, cint, convert to integer. On the other side, open parenthesis, you have to do this to both values, and then close your parenthesis. Notice my error is now gone. It's converting the text to a number so we can do the mathematical subtraction on each side here. So looking at this scenario here, I need another right line so we can see the result. In quotes here to say the difference between the 2 years is, quote, then concatenate, so using the plus operator here, is int year difference. And notice again, we're getting a error talking about conversion. Again, remember right line is expecting type of text and not a number. So we need to convert the response to a string. So adding the .to string here, notice the error has gone away. So the difference between the 2 years is, in this case, the difference here. And if we hit OK here and run our automation, you'll now see the difference of those years is 3. And we're like, well, what's the year difference? And this is where we could put in a bit more logic. Let's go ahead and bring in a multiple assign here. And what we're going to do is demonstrate the ability of dynamically assigning the index values. So what we will do here is have 2 new variables, int number, just say int num1 as a integer, and int num2 is also as a integer. And back in our multiple assign, int number1 and int number2. And what do we have in our example here? We had 4 and 1, right? So in this case, 4 and 1. So using the same examples we had a moment ago, what we can do here, instead of saying 4 and 1 here, we can replace these with the variables. So int number1 and int number2. Int num1 and int num2. Make sure I've got it defined as num1 and num2 and not number1, number2. Notice there are no errors here. It's happy with this assignment. It's taking the values right out of here. Maybe to put a bit more stock in here so we can actually see the values. The difference between the 2 years is about the difference between, and then say quote plus, and then say str year. And then this is going to be int num1, and then the str year int num2 is that. So what this is going to do is give us the actual output so we know what the values are. The difference between number1 as the actual year displayed and int number2 is year displayed is, and it will convert to string. And I've got a error here. Str year is not declared. It is str years. Now error has gone away. Make sure you're using the right variables here. And then this is still taking the difference from above right here. So if I save and run now, we should have a bit more context as to exactly what it is we're looking at, but then also being able to have it dynamically specify those values. The difference between 2018 and 17 is 1. What do I have going on here? Something obviously is not right. Int number1. Int number1, int number, oh, I see. Notice my typo up here. I need to change int number2 here. Try running this again. Caught my error. Hopefully we get a bit better result here. There we go. And 2018 is 3. There we go. So 21 and 18 is a 3-year difference. And that right there concludes our demonstration as it pertains to working with arrays inside of UiPath Studio.